Hi there, people. This is a review of chapter 10 of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And this is one of my favorite chapters. That's why I'm grinning, because it's really cool. So anyway, Victor had gone up into the mountains to get his mind cleared of all of this negativity that he's been experiencing through the trials and the creature and all the murders and all this horrible stuff. So chapter 10 continues the romantic style. Mary Shelley is writing all about the beautiful scenery in Switzerland. And so the first several paragraphs are basically just Victor kind of reflecting on how the natural elements are helping to revitalize his spirit. He does say a little bit that he still is kind of depressed during the day, but that he's actually getting some sleep in the night. Where had they fled when the next morning I awoke? Some peaceful dreams. And so he says, okay, I'm going to go a little bit higher into the mountains, and I'm going to go by myself. If there were any guides with him, he leaves them behind. So he has his mule that's brought to him. He says, I determined to go without a guide, for I was well acquainted with the path, and the presence of another would destroy the solitary grandeur of the scene. He talks about the ascent being precipitous, and it's an important detail that she puts in there because she wants you to notice what a difficult path it is and how it's far away and isolated and difficult to get to, and so it takes him a long time to get there. The ascent is precipitous. The path is cut into continual and short windings. If you do a lot of hiking, that would be like switchbacks, going up the side of a mountain to help you get up the nearly perpendicular side of it. And then there is a quick reference to how if you make the slightest sound, such as even speaking in a loud voice, it produces a concussion of air sufficient to draw destruction upon the head of the speaker. So this is a place where avalanches can take place. You really have to be quiet. So it's not just physically separated, but silence. You have to have some silence there. So it's really nice for his melancholy, and so healing that. Then there's a little excerpt. This is from Mutability by Percy Shelley. So Mary Shelley includes a little bit of a poem called Mutability. The purpose of putting this in, so if you kind of do a little research on the poem and then look at the words, first of all, we rest. A dream has power to poison sleep. So we've got these positive and negative. We rest is good, but a dream has power to poison sleep, a nightmare. So positive, negative. We rise, we get up, one wandering thought pollutes the day if you think negative things. And so it's kind of like mirroring or paralleling what Victor is experiencing. And as you go through the poem with the juxtaposition, the positive to the negative, at the end, man's yesterday may ne'er be like his morrow, meaning it's never the same between one day and the next. Be ready for changes. So kind of like the foreshadowing. So it reminds me of this song by How Can I Help You Say Goodbye by Patty Loveless from 1994. Really great song, but nothing ever stays the same. So that would be like a modern connection. So anyhow, he says, I arrived at the top of the ascent, and for some time I sat upon the rock that overlooks the sea of ice. The field of ice is almost a league in width, but I spent nearly 2 hours in crossing it. I'm jumping around a little bit in that paragraph. And it's important to note how long it takes him. And then next paragraph, as I said this, he kind of exclaims in joy, wandering spirits, if indeed ye wander, and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness, or take me as your companion away from the joys of life. just give me a little bit of peace, or just take me out, because like this is really, it's been a difficult go. As I said this, I suddenly beheld the figure of a man at some distance advancing towards me with superhuman speed. Dun, dun, dun. He bounded over the crevices in the ice, among which I had walked with caution. His stature also, as he approached, seemed to exceed that of man. And you know who this is going to be. Of course it is. It is the wretch whom I had created. I trembled with rage and horror. So he sees the creature coming towards him, and he has all this anger, and everything is kind of coming into his heart. And his first word to this being that he created is devil. Devil, I exclaimed, do you dare approach me, and do not you fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked on your miserable head? Remember, Victor is much smaller than this creature, so it's kind of like, spouting a bunch of irrelevant threats. Begone, vile insect, or rather stay, that I may trample you to dust. Oh, I'm so angry. And then in the next paragraph, the creature responds, I expected this reception, said the demon. All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature. Like, I am yours. You made me, and you spurn me. You turn me out. How dare you sport thus with life? So the creature knows exactly what Victor did. Victor made him and then abandoned him. And so he's throwing it right back in his face. Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind. So it's a threatening tone. Catch that. If you will comply with my conditions, I will leave them and you at peace. But if you refuse, I will glut the maw of death until it be satiated with the blood of your remaining friends. That is quite a threat. That is like, I am going to kill everyone you know if you don't give me what I want. That's not good. Okay, that's bad. So they go back and forth. He says, my rage was without bounds. I sprang on him, like, what can he do? Nothing. He easily eluded me and said, this is the creature, said, be calm. I entreat you to hear me. Now this, I want you to listen. How many times he says this? Hear me. Before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head, have I not suffered enough? Then he goes on, I am thy creature, and I will be even mild and docile, like so mellow, to my natural Lord and King. And again, that God complex that Victor wanted so much, he's literally being called Lord. But it's if you will perform thy part, if you're going to play your role, if you do what you're supposed to, which thou owest me. You owe me this. O Frankenstein, be not equitable to everybody else and then trample upon me alone. I am thy creature. I am yours. Like he's entreating, he's begging. He says, everywhere I see bliss, and I am excluded from that. I witness everybody else's lives. I don't have that. He says, I was benevolent and good. I was good. When he was created, he was good. But misery made him a fiend. Aren't you curious about what his life has been like so far? Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. Now here, Victor says, begone, I will not hear you. So at the previous paragraph, the creature says, hear me. Victor says, I will not hear you. So in the next paragraph, the creature goes back to, it's kind of a begging, but also reasoning. He's very intelligent. You should pick up on that. How can I move thee? Will no entreaties cause thee to turn a favorable eye upon thy creature? I keep the light on, so it won't go off. Again, I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. But am I not alone, miserably alone? Humans were created, and that's when you go to the references to Adam, I am your Adam. That's the allusion to the Bible, the story of Genesis. Why is Adam not all by himself forever? Because people require other humans. It is in our nature to want companionship. And so for Adam, there was Eve. Foreshadowing. So moving through that next big paragraph, he says, let your compassion be moved and do not disdain me. Listen to my tale. There's another one. A sentence down the way. Hear me, hear me. The guilty are allowed by human laws to speak in their own defense before they're condemned. Listen to me, Frankenstein. You accuse me of murder, and yet you would destroy your own creature. You would commit murder. So he's totally using logic against Victor Frankenstein. Listen to me if you can and if you will. And then you don't have to spare me. If you just listen, then you can destroy the work of your hands. Then we wrap it up in the end of this chapter. A sixth time, still, thou canst listen to me and grant me thy compassion. Hear my tale 7 times. It is long and strange. And the temperature, and this is how, okay, I'm sorry, but he's thoughtful. This is how thoughtful he is. The temperature of this place is not fitting to your fine sensations. Come to the hut upon the mountain. The sun is yet high in the heavens. Before it descends to hide itself beyond yon snowy precipices and illuminate another world, you will have heard my story and can decide. And that's the 8th time he says, hear my story. So a lot of times the creature wants to be heard. He wants to be able to tell Victor what it's like, the consequences to the actions. And I'm curious to hear it, aren't you? I know you guys are. So Victor in the last paragraph says, as he said this, he led the way across the ice. I followed. My heart was full and I did not answer him, but his actions show that he's going to go listen. He said, I weighed the various arguments that he had used, logic, and determined at least to listen to his tale. So he says, yes, I will. He also says, I was curious because I wanted to know if he really had murdered my brother, because again, up until now, we still potentially have some doubt. We have not been told for sure what happened. And he says, I eagerly sought a confirmation or denial of this opinion. For the first time also, I felt what the duties of a creator towards his creature were. This is the first time. If it's the first time, he shouldn't have been doing it, but that's just my opinion. And that I ought to render him happy before I complained of his wickedness. Yes, don't prejudge people. That's another lesson. So he said, I consented to listen there at the end, and seating myself by the fire, which my odious companion had lighted, he thus began his tale, which sets us up nicely for chapter 11, in which we have a third narrator starting another section to this story. So we've had 2 narrators. We had Robert Walton with the letters to his sister. We've had Victor telling Robert the story of his life. And now we have Victor in telling the story saying, this is what the creature told me. So chapter 11 then is told in the creature's voice. That's our third narrator. So very exciting, excellent book. Boy, can't wait to get to chapter 11. See you on the next one.